We know that cognitive load it builds and builds and builds, and our student sponges are full. And play-based learning is kind of a cleansing thing for us, right? We're able to compartmentalize ideas, we're able to relax, we're able to remove stress, and it primes our brain for those reintroductions of academic moments.
Hello there, my name is Monica Burns, and welcome to today's bonus episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. If you're used to joining me on Tuesdays for new episodes, you are in for a treat. This is a special bonus episode of the podcast in partnership with Jotform. Just like on Tuesdays, these bonus episodes are designed to give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. If we mention something you'd like to check out, you'll find the link to it in the show notes. So don't forget to head to my website, easyedtechpodcast.com, for all of the links and resources from today's episode. This episode is part of a special bonus series presented by Jotform. Jotform provides an all-in-one solution to streamline administrative tasks, enhance community engagement, and foster innovation. Using their no-code, drag-and-drop forms and workflows, your teams can securely collect and store data, automate routine tasks, and collaborate on team resources. Educational institutions are also eligible for a 30% discount on Jotform Enterprise. Head to their website to learn more. jotform.com/enterprise/education. And a quick note, this episode is part of a special bonus series. You can find the video version exclusively on Jotform's YouTube network. Today's episode is titled Play-Based Learning in Today's Classrooms with Robert Dillon, a bonus episode with Jotform. And today we're exploring the power of play with innovation expert Dr. Robert Dillon. He has a background as a principal, a district leader. I've known him for about a decade now, and he knows exactly how to bridge the gap between curriculum and engagement. So he joins in to talk about how to maintain a playful spirit in virtual spaces, how to rethink our learning environments, and how to support educators through play-centered professional development. So if you're looking to bring more joy, more curiosity, more energy into your teaching, he's got some great strategies for you to explore today. Let's get into the conversation. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to chat with you today about all things play-based learning. But before we get into all of that, can you share a bit with listeners, what is your role in education? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, I get to work with schools all around the country, thinking about things like where the future of education is going, whether we can mine things from the past to make them also innovative. And so for a big chunk of years now, I've had an opportunity to think about what it looks like to change what, how, and where kids learn. And so that gets us to today thinking about play-based learning a little bit.
Perfect. And, I've seen you present multiple times, right? We've known each other for a while. And so for this particular topic, really excited to dive in to see what's new, what's happening in spaces, what you're seeing in your experiences with schools and districts. But before, that piece, what is play-based learning? How would you define this for someone who's maybe heard the term, but isn't quite sure what it looks like in action?
Yeah, I think in the end, it's like one of the most natural things that humans do. Like it's really the embodiment of discovery, exploration, and curiosity, which I think all of our kids, from our youngest toddlers to our students that are in high school and beyond, they have those pieces. I think sometimes school squeezes them out, but we all want to be playful. Like we love being in rooms with people that have playful ideas and playful energy. And the teachers that we remember were playful in some way, whether it was their quirky personality or whatever it was. But it really is the infusion of that energy and those concepts into the planning, design, and execution of learning.
Yeah, and I think the energy piece is so crucial when we all think back about, what it feels like to walk into a space, right? Or to have a conversation with that educator or to collaborate or problem solve, right, around something that has, that kind of energy. So, can you share examples of what effective play-based learning looks like in classrooms?
Yeah, certainly. And, a big chunk of my work with schools, and I should go back to that piece, is thinking about where kids learn. And
Hmm.
we've all walked into sterile learning environments that just suck the play out of us. We've walked into places that were so chaotic that we couldn't hardly handle all the stimulus. And so a lot of my work is trying to optimize and modify the learning environments that are happening. So I come into it with that lens. And I
Hmm.
often find that educators want to talk about things like learning environments. And it's usually a Trojan horse to us talking about curriculum and instructional design. But if you think about the ultimate play place for schools, and this doesn't have to just be preschool or elementary, but like the playground, right?
Hmm.
Or I play on a team, or I'm in a play. All of those things bring these sense of energy and positivity. So I think of all three of those things. So I think of being on the playground. And what I've recently learned, and maybe we should have learned this before, is that no one's ever taught a teacher how to use a playground as a learning space. And so a
Hmm.
lot of my work lately has been teaching teachers like, yes, recess is awesome, unstructured play is a must, but what is guided play? An
Hmm.
amazing space that has an amazing energy. How does that help? So, playground being one of those. And then as I think about our secondary students, I think of like in exciting science labs. I think of outdoor learning. I think of
Hmm.
playing on a team. I think that kind of collaborative piece. All of those have a playful energy to them. So this isn't just about K through five.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting what you said about the playground, right? We often think like, okay, now go, right? Just like run and go and be careful, right? Those are kind of
Yeah.
like the instructions, right, on the playground when you have a group of elementary school students, right, heading out to recess. And, even, I taught upper elementary school, fifth grade, right, for a number of years, right, in that kind of almost middle school sweet spot. And so that idea of going out into the world, right, out into our outdoor spaces, or even for me teaching in New York City, right, Central Park wasn't so far away for us to go through and and have experiences there. That's a great reminder for someone who might come into this conversation thinking that it's more of an elementary piece, right, that there are these secondary components and maybe some really specific academic goals, right, for those secondary students, right, in addition to our elementary ones. So, how does play based learning support academic goals rather than compete with them?
Yeah, I think two pieces. One, we certainly wear our students down over the course of a day, right? We know that cognitive load it builds and builds and builds, and our student sponges are full. And play-based learning is kind of a cleansing thing for us, right?
Hmm.
We're able to compartmentalize ideas, we're able to relax, we're able to remove stress, and it primes our brain for those reintroductions of academic moments. So maybe if you take 4 classes a day, you take 7 classes a day, middle school and high school, we can't just keep pressing and pressing and pressing. And play-based learning is also about like playing with ideas and
Hmm.
playing with concepts. And those types of discussions, those types of interactions, those types of simulations are all at the core of the play-based learning that kids will say, we used to have recess, we used to play.
Yeah.
And we should just frame the playfulness of learning and the exploration, the discovery piece as play-based learning. I think it will engage kids more in the
Hmm.
process.
Yeah, particularly for those secondary students who can wrap their head around that concept, right? Or, who kind of see what's going on, right, in their learning spaces and can articulate what they need or what they want more of or what doesn't feel like the best use of their time. And, you mentioned earlier this idea of structured or unstructured play and then a guided kind of play experience. So, how can teachers observe and assess learning during play based experiences without overstructuring them?
Yeah, I think all good experiences in life, they get set up. They happen and then we reflect on them. So
Mhm.
if we really just think about lesson structure, it's how do you set it up and get people hooked? How do you do
Mhm.
it? And then how do you reflect on it? And sometimes we miss those elements in our lesson design, but there's a piece there where the reflection questions, the reflective conversation becomes an assessment about what our kids know and what we need to come
Yeah.
back to. So, in and of itself, that reflective conversation can be formative assessment. And then also, I trust professionals to be able to observe a situation, make mid course corrections. I can't tell you how many times, I think about coaches on the field. We ran that play, it didn't work. We ran that play
Mhm.
again, it didn't work. Okay, we're going to do something different.
Yeah.
So, our coaches who are teachers know this already.
Mhm.
And so, that type of teacher assessing the quality and value of their lesson within it can happen in these playful moments. I've watched teachers take kids to the playground and say, here's what we're going to do. Go experience that. It kind of goes off the rails because kids haven't done it before or they haven't
Yeah.
experienced it
Mhm.
before. You have to pull them back. So it's not about just like go forth and, be crazy in the forest. It is structured in a way that we're used to, but we've never taken that outdoors.
Yeah. So, in that experience, let's say taking a group of fourth graders out to a playground, right? I know all the different spaces that you work within have variety, of course. Like, what would it look like to give students a set of instructions or a goal or a structure that doesn't feel too much?
Yeah, so I've been working really closely. There's a nonprofit here in St. Louis that they work on inclusive play, right? So they want to
Mhm.
make sure that all kids can be a part of that.
Mhm.
And we've been building kind of these social emotional lessons that you can say, okay, here's what we want you to observe. We want you to observe these interactions on the playground.
Mhm.
Now go and play, but with a lens in mind. So I think it's that lens, right? Like, how do we create
Mhm.
a lens that we're asking students to look at as they do these experiences, and then making sure that the surprises also get recognized. So
Mhm.
part of play-based learning is allowing for discovery. And so if you're a teacher that needs control and it needs to be tight and it needs to be, you're not allowing for the surprises to happen. And what we're finding is as we ask students to be more empathetic of their peers, whether it's peers that are introverted as opposed to extroverted, whether it's students that have a disability, we're really seeing that empathy grow as we're asking students to play together. And so there's a lot of kind of add on and layered benefits to this work as well.
A quick note from the presenter of today's episode, Jotform. Jotform lets you build a form in minutes. Student survey forms, homework submission forms, online quizzes, and so much more. You can start from scratch, or if you want to get a head start, check out their collection of free form templates designed with teachers, schools, and districts in mind. Learn more about Jotform and how educational institutions can get a 30% discount on Jotform Enterprise. Head to their website to learn more. Jotform.com/enterprise/education. Yeah, and I'd imagine for someone who's starting out for the first time, right? Just adding on those layers, right, over the course of the school year is an approach that might feel most comfortable for them. If they are someone who is used to having a lot of control, a lot of in the room structure, now maybe they're in a space that's not as familiar to them or their students, right, which has its own level of challenges or maybe feels a little intimidating to bring a group into. And you mentioned about the nonprofit work and you work closely with educators through professional learning experiences. So what type of support, what types of support do teachers need most as they're making this shift to including more play-based learning into their work?
Yeah, no teacher wants to hear this, but they actually have to play themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what I find is if you build a new space for learning, whether it's an outdoor classroom, a playground, you're going out into the community, whatever that is, if you haven't experienced that as a learner, then you probably aren't going to be comfortable taking your learners to that
Right.
space.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really, really think that as we want to bring more playfulness it means that we have to be playing ourselves. And some of us wear play really well as adults, and some of us are serious, and like that's for
Yeah.
children. It keeps me young in being playful with ideas and concepts and jumping on things and walking around in the woods. All of those things for me keep my mind fresh. And so I think that if teachers want to bring this to the table, they have to do a little bit of an inventory about how can I be more playful in more spaces so that I'm comfortable bringing kids to the table.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting, point when you think about like where there's some reflection, right, of my own, right, to say like when did I decide that a field trip was okay? Was it because I did a professional learning, right, at this museum? I saw this space, I thought it was fun, right? I had a vision of what I was going to walk into with 30, 11-year-olds, right? Like I could picture what that day would look like for us as opposed to finding someplace online and just kind of hoping it would feel comfortable when we got there. Like my confidence level was higher and I take my niece out to the playground, right? And I climb to the top with her and I see something I didn't know was up there because I've never been up that high. And not because why would I be, right? Like
Yeah.
unless, right, I make a conscious choice to be right in that kind of space. Now, as we think about the professional learning piece, one thing I'm curious about, where the kind of technology of it all comes into play, right? I imagine that you support folks who are in person, right, in a physical space, but then you probably connect with people virtually to talk about these kind of components the same way we're talking about today. So, is there a tech piece that you use to help illustrate concepts? Do you find that there's ways to help people, put themselves in a space that they haven't quite been in yet when you're working with them virtually?
Yeah, a couple of different things. So I use a lot of images and video. So
Mhm.
ultimately, you can't put your arms around it until you've seen it. If you ask someone like, "What is an inclusive playground?" Well, that may not make sense, but if I can show you those images and I can show you the video of the power of that, it goes a long way. But then I also think that we can use games, puzzles, riddles to bring that playful energy to the table. So imagine if you're just being asked to solve something as a part of a video call like this. If you're asking
Mhm.
someone to do those types of things, it at least brings up from the core what it means to play with ideas, play with concepts, be playful with your energy. And then the modeling of like, we know we can be on video and the energy can be really low, but asking people to be silly, to say something funny, to do something. We have all these video features that you can add backgrounds and
Right.
eyebrows and whatever, right? Like all of that stuff makes us laugh and puts us in the mood to talk about play. So trying to use all of those can be helpful as well.
Gosh, that's so interesting too, right? We think about some of the like silly filters and things that were like, when would I use that, right? Or when would the time be for me to bring that in? And, perhaps it's those moments where we want things to be a little bit playful. We want to shift the energy, right, in an environment. So I love those examples. So, can you share, something that has happened, maybe an example from your recent, professional learning work that illustrates a common aha moment for teachers as they're wrapping their head around what's possible?
Yeah, I recently was hoping to open a brand new early childhood center. And so I was meeting with the teachers. They hadn't taught one day in this building yet. It was beautiful. It was well thought out. They had done a great job thinking about it. We went out to the playground and walked around. And one of the teachers said, I only have access to this space for 30, 40, maybe an hour a day. So
Mhm.
I have to figure out how to leverage the other spaces in the building to be playful with. And
Mhm.
so we started to talk about like what does it mean to have a playful hallway? What does it mean to have a playful entryway? What does it mean to have a playful library? And so all of a sudden, if you're framing those spaces as places where play is acceptable,
Mhm.
it changes the lens. Like we all have these mental models of what's supposed to happen in a hallway,
Yeah.
what's supposed to happen in a library. And so just bringing that adjective, right? Playful library really messes with people and makes people feel uncomfortable. So you do have to walk through that piece, but it really unlocked the fact that it wasn't the hour of the day where the playground was available. It was, how do I allow all the spaces of this building to embody this idea of play? So it was really good.
I like that, especially when we think of, these isolated moments over the course of the day, or we're so stuck right within the constraints of a particular schedule, which pops us into different modes through the day, right? Finding that thread, right, that might go across the school day or the school week. So, as you think about the work that you do, what you've seen, what advice do you have for schools or districts that want to support play-based learning beyond just that one high energy, classroom?
Yeah, I really think it starts with the leader, and we know this, right? Like a school leader that gets on the announcements and has good energy in the morning already sets the tone that this can be a place where things are playful. Every communication, if it's talking about curiosity and discovery and exploration, no matter if it's K to 12, right? Like using that language over and over and over again says that's the core of who we are. So the leader can set the tone. And then we know for teachers, if you're that person and the whole building looks at you as like you're a unicorn. I can't be them.
Right.
I don't have that energy. Her room's like a carnival and it works for her, but it would never work for me. I just think it's really important to start simple with the idea that I'm going to be more playful with my energy. I'm going to talk about the things that I'm thinking about. I'm going to talk about the things that I'm curious about. I'm going to try to expand the number of spaces where my students learn. Those are all really good starting points for teachers that may not be ready to dive in, but they all know that like we want better focus, attention, and engagement. And I can just tell you the places where I see the highest levels of focus, attention, and engagement are places that are playful.
Yeah.
And so if that's what we're looking for, let's go grab some stuff that's worked in the past and retool it for today. And that's why I think now more than ever, play-based learning is important.
That's amazing. And it's such a great way for us to wrap up this conversation with things people can do right away, things they can look out for, and ways to really rethink the spaces that they're in every day and what's possible for them. So where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about your publications, your professional learning? Where can they learn more about your work?
Yeah, most of my stuff's at drrobertdillon.com. Super easy to get there and it gets you to everything else. I do write a weekly newsletter on Substack that talks about play and innovation and learning environments, and then lots of videos about learning environments that are out there on YouTube. So do all the things, hunt all those things down. I know you'll put them in the show notes. Will be good to make sure we connect with anyone who's interested.
Perfect. And that's right. Yeah, we'll put all the links for people to be able to find, follow along, and stay connected. So thank you so much for your time and your energy today.
Thanks.
It was so much fun chatting with Dr. Robert Dillon today. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from the episode. Play-based learning is rooted in human curiosity and energy, and it applies to learners of all ages. Play-based learning supports academic goals by reducing cognitive load and helping students re-engage with challenging content. Reflection during and after playful experiences becomes a natural way to assess learning without overstructuring. Leaders set the tone for a playful culture, and even small shifts in language, energy, and space design can expand play across a school. Remember, you can find the show notes and the full list of resources from today's episode by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com. That's where you'll find all the ways to connect with Dr. Robert Dillon and, of course, the team at Jotform. A big thank you to Jotform, the presenter of today's episode and this special series. If you want to watch the video version of this episode, you can find it exclusively on Jotform's YouTube network. Just head to YouTube and type Jotform in the search bar. To learn more about Jotform and how educational institutions can get a 30% discount on Jotform Enterprise, head to jotform.com/enterprise/education. If you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or another favorite app, maybe even YouTube, don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button. When you follow along with the podcast, each new episode will download for you automatically so you don't miss a thing. It's totally free to follow or subscribe. It just helps you get those notifications so you know when a new episode is available. And if you have a moment and are feeling extra helpful today, please leave a rating or review for the podcast. It helps other educators find this podcast when they're searching for topics like ed tech in their podcast app. Have a great week and check back on Tuesday morning for another new episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast.